Dear Sir Dr. Nelle Karunaratna, the Vice Chancellor of the University, I have to invite you, sir, again to present a token of appreciation to Professor Shanika Hirimpuregama, the Chairperson of the University Grants Commission, the Chief Guest of today's inauguration ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are moving on to a very special segment of ICMA 2014. Faculty of Graduate Studies is the umbrella unit which serves for research of all the faculties of the university. Today, the International Journal of Multidisciplinary Studies is going to be launched, the first issue of the first volume. This biannual multidisciplinary journal belongs to all the academics of the university. Now I would like to invite Senior Professor Swarna PhD, the Conference Chair of ICMA 2014, the Dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies, University of Sri Jayewarenepura, to present the first issue of the first volume of the International Journal of Multidisciplinary Studies to the Chief Guest of the ceremony, Professor Shanika Hirimpuregama, the Chairperson of the University Grants Commission. Now it's the time for the keynote address titled Harnessing Knowledge and Harmonizing Diversities Through Multidisciplinary Approaches. I would like to invite Mrs. Badra Herath, Senior Lecturer of the Department of Geography, to introduce the keynote speaker of today's inauguration, Professor Mohan Munasinghe.
Good morning, Reverend Sirs, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Due to time constraints, I am forced to summarize the numerous achievements of Professor Munasinghe. I would like to start with Professor Munasinghe's academic background. Professor Munasinghe earned his bachelor's from Cambridge University, UK, MSc in Electrical Engineering from MIT, USA, PhD in Solid State Physics from McGill University, Canada, and MA in Development Economics from Concordia University in Canada. He has won many international prizes and honors for exceptional global academic and research contribution in the field of climate change, economics, energy, and environment. Most notably, he was Vice Chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that is IPCC, and shared the 2007 Nobel Prize of Peace for efforts to build up and disseminate greater knowledge about climate change and to lay foundation for measures that are needed to counteract such change. I'm happy to say that Professor Emeritus Professor Ms. Munasinghe also with us. She also shared that Nobel Prize by way of contributing 2000 assessment, writing chapter on urban settlement. Further, Professor Mohan Munasinghe was awarded Edelman Randall Prize for unique and innovative contributions to energy research by the US and at the International Association on Energy Economics. In addition, the Green Award for Exceptional Contribution to Sustainable Development was presented him at 6th World Congress of the International Federation on Environmental Journalism. He was honored 2010 Sri Lanka Presidential Award for Excellence in Scientific Research. He has also received many other national and international awards for his exceptional academic and professional contribution. Professor Mohan Munasinghe taught at leading universities worldwide as a visiting professor at Wales Federation University of Para, Brazil, University of Peking, China, Terry University of India, Cape Town University of South Africa, Beijing Institute of ecological economics, Sweden, and other countries. He is fellow of several international academies of science and served on the editorial board over a dozen professional journals. He has authored 93 books and over 350 technical papers on sustainable development, climate change, economics, power, energy, water resources, transport, environment, disaster, and information and communication technology. Professor Munasinghe was the senior advisor to the President of Sri Lanka, helping to formulate and implement the national energy policy, and also served on the Presidential Commission that determined national telecommunication policy. Further, he has contributed his expertise as advisor consultant to many worldwide bodies such as UN, UNDP, UNESCO, ESCAP, CEDA, IDRC, and ADB. He was Senior Advisor Manager, World Bank, Washington, D.C., covering sustainable development, environmental policy, water, energy, and transport. After working over 40 years in international arena, he is recognized as a leading world authority on sustainable development, economics, energy, and environment. He is especially known for transdisciplinary thinking, having developed the internationally recognized, widely taught and applied discipline of sustainomics, which provides a practical framework for making development sustainable. Recently, he proposed the widely acclaimed new concept of Millennium Development Goals at the United Nations to complement the Millennium Development Goals. Professor Munasinghe is a source of great pride to all Sri Lankans, and particularly to all academics of Sri Lanka. Given his academic merits, international and national recognition, and his transdisciplinary thinking, Professor Munasinghe can be considered as the most suitable person to address this international conference on multidisciplinary approaches 2014 as the keynote speaker. Therefore, I proudly invite Professor Munasinghe to deliver the keynote address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, Venerable Sirs, distinguished on the podium, and of course, erudite guests and academics fellow. It's a very great honor and privilege for me to be addressing you here today, and I particularly thank Bhadra for having engineered this particular. I'm in between visits. In fact, my son got married in Kandy yesterday, and I rushed back for this meeting, so this is an important occasion for me. I have a lot of ground to cover, and I realize the hour is late, so I will try to be as brief as possible. Let me start by wishing you Ayubowan Wanakam greetings, and also congratulate the organizers for this particular meeting. I think transdisciplinary methods are required to empower what I call multi-stakeholder groups, including government, civil society, and business, to make development more sustainable, not only in Sri Lanka, but worldwide. Let me just briefly paraphrase my understanding of the terminology. I think we had a very erudite presentation before Professor Karuna. To me, multidisciplinary is a kind of a starting point, because it's where different disciplines try to coordinate their thinking, but usually after the fact. Interdisciplinary is where people then, not as individuals, try to work as teams to achieve a synthesis, but again, after doing the research, when they are at the results stage. What I call transdisciplinary, which is the approach that I recommend, is where people actually get together before they apply their knowledge. And they develop models which are truly transdisciplinary. That is the most difficult thing to do. So let's start very quickly with what the challenges we face. There are multiple global problems, and it is because these problems are complex and that we need integrated solutions, and that is why we need the transdisciplinary approaches. So there is a risk of global breakdown because of many shocks. We have the persistent poverty, we have resource shortages, unfortunately very weak leadership and poor decision making. We have had problems in the financial sector, as you know, globally, problems with trade, shocks and disasters, unsustainable values growing in societies, and a lot of conflicts in the world. Now these threats are interrelated, but unfortunately stakeholder interests are very divergent. They are very uncoordinated, particularly the world's leaders are not working together to solve this problem. So we need a very robust strategy which is integrated, and particularly we need the transdisciplinary methods to take us forward. If we don't, we risk a future, and I've done many scenario studies with other colleagues in the world, where basically you have a process which we call barbarization, where we have, as we now today face, very unethical and immoral values, with combining with all the various types of problems we have, poverty, resource shortages, and of course climate change, which leads to a complete chaos and breakdown. A sort of a fortress world where the rich will live in protected areas and the poor will die in miserable conditions outside. And this happens even in a small scale. You have now what are called gated communities, where you have small apartment buildings with their own security guards, and they don't really care what happens outside. So this is not a world that we want to encourage. And the poor, of course, mainly live in the developing world, in the tropical part. If we look at global resource use and limits, these are 6 or 7 types of resources which we have done research on. And in areas like biodiversity loss, climate change, and nitrogen use, we are greatly exceeding global limits. In other areas, we are approaching them, but mainly the message is bad. We are overusing resources. And to summarize, there is something called the ecological footprint of humanity. How much of resources do we use globally? And at the moment, we are using 50% more of the world's capacity, everything, energy, water, whatever you have, more than the world can sustainably produce. So we are overusing already, and very soon we'll be requiring 2 planets in a few years. Unfortunately, on the right side, you see that the income and wealth is very poorly distributed. The top 20% of the world's population, income by richest, are consuming 60 times more per capita than the poorest 20%. And that's why it's called the champagne tax. And of course, we have this spectacle, and I go to these conferences myself. Every conference after conference, the world's leaders get up and say, yes, we are going to raise 2 billion poor people out of poverty. But if the rich of the world are consuming more than 1 planet, then where are the resources to raise the poor out of poverty? It's a very cynical situation, and that is why nothing happens, only promises. On top of that, we have poor resource decision making. I'll tell you very briefly how this happens. If you look at the structure of the way we do things, the most basic is about geophysical resources. Everything depends on the air, the water, the energy, and so on. On top of that, we have a set of productive economic assets. The machines, the capital, the labor, the things that produce the shirt you wear, the car you drive, and so on. And then right on top, we have what are called the monetary aggregates. You have stock market growth, GNP growth, and other things. And so we tend to focus on the monetary, that which I call head in the clouds. but we have to always keep our feet on the ground. We have to be aware of the biogeophysical resources. And as long as the three layers are close together, then we are safe. But that is not the situation. What happened in 2008 with the asset bubble is that financial markets and stock markets and property values greatly exceeded the true value, economic value of those assets. When that bubble collapsed, people were left with assets which had absolutely no financial value, because this is what is called a bubble, right? You look at, so that is the financial economic. There is a social bubble. What is the social bubble? Every day we talk about high economic growth rates. But there is an ugly truth behind that, and the truth is that there are many poor people, and poor people are growing, close to 2 billion today. So all the high growth rate hides that fact. Okay. And last of all, I think those of you who have done environment know the whole truth about environmental externalities, that we are overusing the natural resource base, and we will pay for that later. Not we, but our children and grandchildren. So this is a kind of get rich quickly, use now, pay later. Okay? The principle of borrowing. And if you look at how world leaders have deployed resources to meet these challenges, for the asset, the financial bubble, 6 trillion, the $6,000 billion was found very quickly in a matter of months. Why? Because there were rich banks and big companies to be bailed out. For the question of poverty, 2 billion poor people, we are putting about 100 billion a year, which is 1/60th the amount to bail out the banks. And for things like environment, climate, and so on, we are spending a few billion, which is pocket change, peanuts, as the chairman of the UGC said. So with these priorities, I ask you, can we solve the problems of the world? And on top of that, let me tell you that we are spending $2 trillion on armaments every year. 2 trillion, 2,000 billion. Now, unfortunately, if you look at the financial sector, what we feel is that they have not really learned much from the lesson of 2000. Right? So I'm trying to tell you the complexities of the world, that while we study physics, chemistry, and other things, there are a lot of other things that are happening in the world which are destroying the very framework in which universities and academics work. For example, I have used the word banksters because banks are about the only area, and I hope there are no bankers in the audience and they will forgive me, but banking is one of the few sectors where you can do wrong, you can rob, and you are actually rewarded. The examples are many. The biggest banks in the world, Barclays, Deutsche Bank, Societe Generale, BNP Paribas, they've been fined billions of dollars for malpractice, for manipulating interest rates. These are the biggest banks in the world. The head of JP Morgan, after they paid $18 billion in fines, received a 74% raise in income. So it is ludicrous, but that is the situation. And governments routinely fail to regulate banks. Okay? And in fact, what they have done is they have rewarded bad practice. When banks went bankrupt, and also big companies, the taxpayer had to step in and bail them out. Fortunately, it didn't happen in Sri Lanka, but in other countries, poor people with their tax money actually bailed out the rich. Okay? So it's all upside down. And there's growing inequality and wealth concentration. I mean, the head of the IMF, who I know, Christine Lagarde personally, made this statement. She's the 85 richest people in the world who will fit into a single London double-decker bus, control as much wealth as the poorest half of the global population, 3.5 billion. You look at the salaries, for example, in fast foods, the Chipotle Mexican Grill, the CEO earns 1,200 times more than the average worker. Okay. So then this is inequalities going on everywhere. There are trade inequalities going on, and that is the World Trade Organization is systematically biased against the developing countries, and poor farmers who are being put out of business, a lot by agricultural multinationals. And then, of course, you have climate change, which is the ultimate inequality multiplier, because climate change is caused mainly by the rich and the rich countries. But the consequences will be mainly suffered by the poor and the poorer countries. So it is totally unfair. But one of the things I will present to you is that we, through transdisciplinary research and through proper sustainable development practices, can overcome this. We can overcome not only poverty, malnutrition, and ill health and all the other things, but we can also combat climate change very effectively if we take a very holistic approach, an integrated strategy. But meanwhile, shocks and disasters are creating more and more refugees. There are like 50 million people who are refugees today. Some of them are through natural disasters, but many of them are through wars and conflicts. Thank God we have overcome our problem. But we have to be very careful that it does not arise again. I think people's memories, especially Sri Lankan memories, are very short. And one of the main things, and this is where academics have to be at the forefront, and I will talk about that later as well, it's not only transdisciplinary research, but multi-stakeholder, multi-ethnic approaches. I think these are extremely important. I think all the religions, including Buddhism, which is the principal religion of this country, preach this, so we must practice. I think it's extremely important for us as a nation. Now, the other factor, coming back to the global situation, is that there is a shift in influence from the rich countries to the BRICS, the so-called emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And this is a very healthy sign, because we have to move from what is called a unipolar world to a polycentric world. Because the unipolar world is based on, led by the US, driven by NATO and others, and is strongly dominated by military intervention, whether it's in Iraq or Syria or Afghanistan or wherever. The polycentric world that is emerging, which is what the BRICS are agreeing for, is much more on economic soft power. And some people may not like that, but economic influence is much better than military. It's a step forward. And that is the kind of world that we want to work towards, where small countries like Sri Lanka can survive in a much better, in a polycentric or multipolar world. And just to give you an example, in the unipolar world, at the moment, the US is able to flood the economy of the world with dollars, because dollars are the reserve currency. They can print as many dollars as they want, and we have 27. That is a consequence of the unipolar world. US military interventions. They have special forces in 134 countries. So the Western, and they have also intervened disastrously and caused a lot of damage in other countries. So they cannot afford to point the finger at other people, like at us especially, and tell us that we are doing wrong. Let me be very clear. I'm not saying that we can do wrong and excuse ourselves by saying, okay, the other people are doing it. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying the other people are hypocritical for accusing us. But at the same time, if we have done wrong, then we must shine the light of truth on those wrongs and correct it. This is the truth of, and this is what academia and transdisciplinary research stands for. And I'm talking about other political matters, but this is very true. We must shine the light of truth in order to come up with a unified nation that will move forward. So let me move very quickly to my framework of sustainomics. which is what I have been preaching for 20 years, which is a transdisciplinary approach. And basically what we are saying is that if we look at problems one at a time, poverty here, resource problem there, and so on, and we are allowing market forces to go unrestrained, then governments are not really solving these problems. So it is a high-risk world. This is business as usual. It has not worked. What we need is to look at what is driving these problems. What is driving these problems is the way we consume, mainly bad. We don't consume well. Production technology that we use. Of course, the governance, mainly misgovernance, I'm afraid, and also population. So we need systematically reform market forces to integrate our approach, particularly business and civil society, to work with governments and to develop these integrated transdisciplinary strategies for sustainability. And if we do that, then we can get there. So the first principle of Sustainomics is called making development more sustainable. It is a call for empowerment. Okay? And what it really is the following, that if sustainable development, all these problems, like learning to climb a mountain, the peak is a bit covered with clouds, we don't exactly know. Okay? In fact, transdisciplinary research is exactly like that. They're not very clear, each one has a different vision. But we keep climbing uphill. This is called the gradient method. As long as you climb uphill, you know someday you will reach the peak. Right? So you don't give up. This is extremely important. And many of the things that we need to do to make development more sustainable is within our hands. Right? We can plant a tree. When we leave this room, we switch off the lights. We can eat less meat. There are so many things we can do at the individual level. We can do it at the corporate level. Companies in terms of corporate social responsibility and so on. And we can do it at the national level. I have worked with colleagues to develop models to make all of the major sectors of the economy, agriculture, energy, industry, transport, all of them can be made much more sustainable. It is just the laziness of bureaucrats which is preventing us. But we have the models and methods, and transdisciplinary research is a very important part of that. The second core concept, which is very important, is called harmonizing the sustainable development triangle, which is something I presented 20 years ago or more in the 1992 Earth Summit. At the time it was not well received, but now it is very well accepted. And of course we start with economic because we need more money, especially the poor, to feed and clothe themselves. But there is a social dimension as well, which is the dimension of empowerment, that we need people who are disadvantaged to have a seat at the table, to have their voice. And last but not least, in the environment, we have to protect the air, the water, and the land that we live on. And almost any problem that we think of, whether it's poverty or climate change, can be solved in terms of those three dimensions. It's very important. There are three kinds of assets that go with this, which we have to build. We are in Sri Lanka focusing very much on what we call manufactured capital, so the roads, bridges, so on and so forth. But we must not forget the natural capital. In the process of building all these things, if we destroy our environment, then we will be poorer in the end. And we must also not forget the social capital, which is the glue that binds society together. Every day we are eroding social capital. If you have skyscrapers and glittering boulevards, but if a woman cannot walk the streets of that city without fear of molestation, then that is not having social capital. It's very important. And I'll tell you that at the community and the national level, how this has played a part. For example, in the 2004 tsunami, immediately after the tsunami, what held Sri Lanka together was not really government. It was really private people, organizations, church groups, temples, mosques, Covil's, companies. For a month, it was individuals like you and I who helped the country to recover, who went to the beaches, helped those who were badly affected. Because 1 in every 500 people was affected. And then government recovered only after about a month. I was there, I know I helped to organize with NGOs some of the relief efforts. So that was a triumph of social capital. For a short period in our history, we realized that we do have this social capital, the binding glue that keeps us together, right? But it was soon forgotten. Now, in the case of Hurricane Katrina, which happened shortly afterwards, if you remember in the US, exactly the opposite happened. This is a very rich society, a relatively small number of people were killed, but that whole society fell apart. There was rape and looting and so on. There was total lack of social capital. So social capital is not a function of how rich the society is, but how rich the culture is. So let us not forget that in the process of modernization, that we do not give up those values that have built this society in a multi-ethnic way. Okay? And then, of course, the third core concept, which is also important, is innovation. This is where transdisciplinary comes in. We have to have values which are more sustainable. We have to think in terms of all disciplines. We have to think in terms of the globe, not just our neighborhood. Time, not days, but centuries. We have to think in terms of many stakeholders. And particularly, values are ethical and moral values have to be taught to the young people. That greed and selfishness and violence aren't sustainable. So, if we look at society today, it is driven by unethical social values. And this is what is a root cause of our problem, that you have greed, selfishness driving most of the things that are going on. Not only in Sri Lanka, but in the whole world. Okay? That has caused what we I call a model of economic maldevelopment. Bad. It is growth is based on debt, which is unsustainable, and of course, overconsumption by elites. Our grandparents actually saved, and it is their investment which we are enjoying today. But we have learned a different truth. We have learned that it's better to borrow than to save. So we can live even better, but we are leaving a huge debt for our children and our grandchildren. And this is the unfortunate. And because of that, you have a huge environment. There will be a lot of pollution and other problems for the future. And the less environmental resources you have, then the more people will fight over the few resources that are there. So this is a completely bad cycle which we have to break. And part of it is to transcend disciplines, partly because the issues we face are not a single discipline. Sustainable development requires every discipline from philosophy all the way to natural sciences to solve the problem, not one. Now, this is a difficult thing to ask, particularly of students today, because in our day, you were taught to learn your subject, and you did your PhD, and as long as you made an original contribution and you were the best thinker in your discipline, that's what counted. I'm telling you, you still have to be that. You still have to be the best in the world in your narrow discipline. But now you are also asked to think more broadly, this way. It's a tough ask, but that is what the world needs, to be excellent in your area, but to also think more broadly. And this is, I'm delighted that the university and the UGC is supporting this center and this way of thinking. And of course, we need to work with multiple stakeholders. We need to bring in business and civil society to work with government, not to work against government. But really, government needs help, not just in Sri Lanka, but in every country of the world. They are failing to solve the problems that affect common people. So business and civil society have to work with them. I'm going to skip this part and move on to tell you this is not an empty box. There are many models and methods, and this approach has been used in many sectors, in many regions of the world, and I can give you examples if you contact me afterwards. One of the things we need to do is to use different approaches, because, for example, in the economic approach, the integrative mechanism is optimality. Optimality is that in economics and finance, you tend to look on one number, which is what the monetary value. That's why we like to find out whether the stock market index is going up or GNP is going up. One number. But when you look at one number, there is a kind of myopia because you forget everything else that is going on. So the environmental and social approaches tell you that you should be a little broader, you should be more durable, you should be more sustainable, that you have to look at the overall health of the system. To just give you an example, if you're an Olympic sprinter, you are in the optimal mode. It's like the economics. You want to run that race in the lowest possible time. So you will have your right breakfast, you will do your warm-ups, and you will run the race even if you risk tearing a muscle that you lose. But if you're a middle-aged walker like myself, that is the more durable mode. You want to do that walk for 20 or 30 years. So you walk at your own pace every day for a long time. So both modes are very important. Okay? But we must not forget that in this optimization, that we think of only one thing and forget everything else. Perhaps in Sri Lanka, there is a tendency now to focus too much on the economic development aspects. Economic development is very good, but we must not forget the environmental and the social dimensions. So let me give you two quick examples of how this has been applied. And one is the application to climate change. As I said at the present time, the northern countries have done most of the problem, created the problem. But they are expecting the southern countries, who have hardly any emissions, to cut back even further, which is totally unfair, right? But we can find a way to make development more sustainable, to solve our development problems, and also to deal with the issue of climate change. And this is the model here. You will see here that on the vertical axis is the amount of greenhouse gas emissions. On the horizontal is per capita GNP. So if you are a poor country, you are at point A, which means you have low GNP per capita, but also low greenhouse gas emissions. If you are a rich country, you are at C. You are above the safe limit for greenhouse gas emissions. All of these countries, Europe, US, Japan, are exceeding the safe limit. But they are also very rich, right? They are on the right-hand side of the line. Many countries are in the middle, B, that is more like Sri Lanka. So the number one thing we have said in the Climate Convention is that the rich countries must reduce their emissions. So basically, they don't have to go backwards, they don't have to become poor. They can remain rich, but they must use less resources. And for the middle countries, this is the path. That we can still become richer, but we don't have to ride the same curve of the rich countries. Why? Because there are not enough resources. There's not enough water, there's not enough food, there's not enough energy for 7+ billion people on the planet to consume like the Americans. Okay, so we have one part of the deal, the other part of it. Whether it will happen, we don't know. But this is what we need to do. Now at the country level, as I said, it is quite possible to bring this global level down to the national level and integrate these sustainability practices into the mainstream sectors of the economy. Can be done. And we have various kinds of macro models, environmental models, poverty models to do exactly that. We have what are known as green national accounts, where we look not only at GDP, but also at the environmental and the social consequences of those consumption decisions. and I'll give you a very quick example of agriculture of how we did this. There is a tool called Action Impact Matrix, which is a transdisciplinary tool, which we have developed at my institute, where we look at national objectives in relation to some of the actions we are taking. So if we build a highway, what are the consequences for national objectives? And this methodology is very useful to develop a transdisciplinary approach. I don't have time to look into this, but let me simply say that we applied it to agriculture and climate change. So the first part of the exercise was to look at climate modeling, which requires physics, chemistry, mathematics, and all those sciences, to see what the climate of Sri Lanka would be in the year 2050. And so we were able to make projections about rainfall and temperature and so on, say 30, 40 years from now. Then we used a CGE model to project how our agriculture sector would evolve, the one in yellow, in the next 30 to 40 years. And what we found, this is condensing 3 years of research into less than 3 minutes. In the dry zone, the agricultural output actually fell because the higher temperatures and more drought, less rain. In the wet zone, tea and other crops actually improved. Why? Because there was more rainfall. Okay? So overall, the effects balanced out, and we had GIS maps which showed what happened in the various parts of the country. But there is a very interesting outcome. Although one crop goes up, the other one goes down, there is a balance, but there is also inequality, because the poor farmers in the dry zone are getting poorer, whereas the plantation owners who are a little better off in the hill country are getting richer. And there are also demographics. So even in this small country, climate change is going to make the poor poorer and the rich richer. Plus, there is possibility of demographic movement, because when people are starving or not, they will move. So we have to, so this kind of transdisciplinary study will help government to plan for the future. Because if that is going, and it is already beginning to happen, and it will happen in 10 years, we need to plan for this. I will also, I have to move fast because I know time is moving. One of the other things is environmental impacts, right? And one of the things we have to do with environmental impacts, I know that USK is very strong on forestry. In fact, a number of your students receive scholarships from my institute and doing extremely well. But the thing to remember in economic valuation of environment is that if something has no recognized economic value, then there is a tendency to waste that resource. So we chop down trees because we don't realize the true value. So valuation of environmental assets is a very important part of this transdisciplinary approach. I'm going to skip this and just move to one other example from Sri Lanka. All these are Sri Lankan examples. This is about small hydro, which is a renewable form of energy. We looked at 24 hydro sites, mini hydro sites in Sri Lanka, and we looked at 3 variables. Normally, when you look at the hydro site, you only look at the economic dimension. If you know, those of you who do economics, you do cost-benefit analysis, right? But we said no. If we want to be transdisciplinary, let us look at the social aspect, let us look at the environment. So in economics, we are looking at the cost, the usual thing. Socially, we say how many people are displaced, because we may have to build a dam, we may have to move people out. So that is a social impact. And for the environmental, the loss of biodiversity, because if you have to clear some areas, you lose some forests. Now, if you look at those three variables, and this is an interesting example, these are the 24 sites, each bar. One, the different colors tell you what is the economic cost, what is the social cost, number of people that are displaced, and what is the environmental cost, how much of biodiversity has been lost. Now, if you look at this diagram, you can't understand this. If you showed this diagram to a minister, you would be thrown out of the room in less than 5 minutes. So even an academic cannot understand this. Now, if you replot that in a different way, see, on the vertical axis is the economic cost. Okay, that is the economic dimension. Coming out of the page is the social cost, the number of people that are resettled or displaced. And into the paper is the biodiversity loss. Now, each of those three variables requires many disciplines to cooperate. The economists have to do something with the engineers to calculate the cost. The sociologists have to look at the social displacement. Biodiversity index requires many disciplines from the life sciences. So there's a lot of cooperation to boil down to these few numbers. Now, if you plot in 3 dimensions, then the picture becomes very clear, because numbers that are close to the origin, okay, close to the origin there are the best. Because if you're close to the origin, you are low in economic cost, you are low in biodiversity loss, you are low in displacement. So you only look at the hydro sites that are close to the origin. Anything that is far out, which is an outlier, is not good. So this is a way of simplifying all that knowledge into, so presentation is also very important. Doing transdisciplinary research is one thing, gathering reams of data. In fact, the world is drowning in data. It is your brain as a good researcher which allows us to present the results in a way that you can make a decision. So in this way you can decide which of the projects can be done and which should not be done. Okay? So let's move on very quickly and finish up by saying how we can respond, how you and I can do. And I think academics can do a lot. Okay? The Chinese at the 18th Party Congress last year talked about a 21st century global eco-civilization. This is from the highest level downwards. It's an amazing and a contrast from the leaders of other countries who are talking about war and other things. Okay? These people are really serious about the sustainability. And what they are talking about is the sustainable development triangle within a planetary boundary. And they are, for example, they are looking at other concepts like happiness and well-being. For example, I'm working with the concept of gross national happiness. You may ask what it is. I'm working with the King of Bhutan on that to replace gross national product. Because ultimately, you are not interested in how much people consume, you are interested in how happy people are, right? And there are methods, in 10 years, we will have methods to measure that, and it's much better than GNP. Production and consumption are part of happiness. Yes, we have to consume a certain amount, but it is not the only measure of happiness, right? And what we need, the vision is socially to meet the basic needs of all human beings, especially the poor and vulnerable, ensuring peace, harmony, social justice, and security. In the environment, we must respect nature, live within the planetary boundaries. Very important. And on the economic side, we do not give up prosperity. We can have a prosperous economy, but we have to respect the social and environmental constraints. And we can be rich, but also sustainable. And for this, I think the academics in Sri Lanka have a key role to play because we have a robust economy, we have the technology, resources and skills can be built, We have very good social and human capital, committed to peace and unity. And we have an ancient culture which respects our nature. So we need to train future leaders, not only in academia, but business and civil society. We need to educate sustainable consumers and producers, and business and civil society have to work with government. And let me tell you, governance, okay? Because governance in Sri Lanka is very poor. Okay? We have a right and a role to play. It is not the sole preserve of the state. You and I have to demand higher standards, right? We have to provide the leadership, and we have to be much more active in this role. And we have to raise the values and standards, particularly among young people. I won't read the list, but this concept of service to the nation, honesty and integrity, respect for nature, all of discipline, leadership, all of these values must be relearned from the kindergarten upwards. Otherwise, we will not survive as a nation. I am going to skip this last little bit because time is short. Let me just move to the end and just give you one example. Which is, we need to build a society of sustainable consumers. I said the rich are over-consuming, but at the same time we have to have sustainable producers as well. Producers who do not pollute, who do not waste materials in their production. If we can build a cycle of sustainable consumers and producers, then that can spread throughout the society until we become a completely sustainable society. It can be done. There are communities that have done it. But remember, just sustainable production alone is not enough. We need, as consumers, to be also very responsible. And those who are more affluent have a special role. We can't just point the finger at Western countries, because let me tell you, the 5% of elite in Sri Lanka are consuming exactly at the same level of the people in Europe and the US. And we are copying exactly the bad habits. Why should you copy that habit when those people have failed? They are over-consuming. Why should we not find a more sustainable one? So that is very important. And of course, our producers have to be much more sustainable. And I think this university and this center can work with responsible media to develop a much more sustainable society. Let me end with this very hopeful message, okay? I think we have multiple global problems, poverty and so on, climate change, but they can be solved together, holistically, if we begin now. The Sustainomics framework I showed you is one method of doing this, of moving to a safer and better future. Transdisciplinary approaches are absolutely essential. Governance systems must be transformed because as academics we cannot retreat to the ivory towers. We have to change the governance systems specifically. And we can work to devise these new models. So we've gone through what the challenges are, how we can solve the problems, some of the practical methods and tools, and we have also discussed how you and I have a role in this transformation. This is the ancient Pali blessing, which you all know, I think. May the rains come in time, which is the environment. May the harvest be bountiful, which is the economy. May the people be happy and contented. May the king be righteous, which is social. So many hundreds of years ago, they knew about the Sustainable Development Triangle. We are just reinventing the wheel today. My institute does a lot of work on sustainability. Some of your students already know us, but you're very welcome to contact me. We give awards and research. We do dissemination. I have taught courses in many universities in the world on Sustainomics. These are among the 300 students in China. This is civil servants in India, South Africa, and so on. There is further reading, but thank you very much indeed for your patient hearing. Stuti, Nandri, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now to present a token of appreciation to Professor Mohan Munasinghe, I would like to invite Dr. N.L.A. Karunaratne, the Vice Chancellor of the University. Now is the time to enjoy the cultural event of today's agenda, and I cordially invite the Vice Chancellor and the professors of the head table to come and join with us in the audience and enjoy the event, whose music has been played in distinguished international venues. This morning, as an invocation to the conference on multidisciplinary approaches, he will play his signature style that is in keeping with the theme of the conference, harnessing knowledge and harmonizing diversities. He is accompanied on the Gatabera by Professor Karunaratne Bandara and Peshala Manoj, a dynamic young tablaist in Sri Lanka. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm certain that it was a blissful bundle of minutes. Even I was in a different world. Today evening, you get the opportunity to witness the Pradeepanjali concert, composed and directed by Sangeet Pradeep Ratnayaka, followed by a dinner. So you all are invited to come and witness this concert and join with us for dinner. Now is the time to give away some tokens of appreciation, and for that I would like to invite again Dr. N.L.A. Karunaratne, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Sri Jayewarenepura. We would like to give away the first token of appreciation to Sangeet Pradeep Ratnayaka. Next, I would like to invite a representative from the Cambridge Finance to collect a token of appreciation for their platinum sponsorship. My next invitation goes to a representative from the Sarasavi Bookshop Private Limited to collect a token of appreciation for their valuable sponsorship. Well, the next token of appreciation goes to a representative from the People's Bank to collect a token of appreciation for their valuable sponsorship. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I now invite Dr. Thilini Gurusekara to propose vote of thanks, officially marking the end of the inauguration ceremony.
Venerable members of the Mahasangha, Chief Guest, Guest of Honor, the Vice Chancellor, distinguished invitees, academic staff members, non-academic staff members, and all who are present here today at ICMA 2014. On behalf of the organizing committee of the first international conference on multidisciplinary approaches, I sincerely thank you all for attending, supporting, and sponsoring this nationally important event. We thank our chief guest of the ceremony, Professor Shanika Hiduguregama, Chairperson of the University Grant Commission, for gracing this occasion. Madam, we are deeply honored by your presence and taking time off from your busy schedule. We greatly appreciate your generous support, which enabled us to conduct this event successfully. We look forward to your continued support in future endeavors and wish you all the best. We thank our guest of honor and the founder dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies, Professor M.M. Karunanayaka, for accepting our invitation and delivering an informative, interesting, and valuable presentation. We also thank Professor Mohan Munisinghe for accepting our invitation to be the keynote speaker at this event. Thank you for sharing rich views and valuable suggestions with us. All your contributions resulted in a very thriving inauguration for ICMA 2014. We specially thank our Vice Chancellor, Dr. N.L.A. Karunaratne, for all the valuable support, encouragement and motivation. Sir, your support toward all the endeavors of University of Sri Jayewarenepura is an immense strength to us. Thank you. We are much obliged to our platinum sponsor, Cambridge Finance Limited, for their generosity. We acknowledge Dr. Reverend Madhagoda Abethisa Thero for assisting us to gain this sponsorship. Thank you for the financial support we have received from University Grant Commission Sri Lanka. We appreciate the generous sponsorship received from the People's Bank and the Sarasavi Bookshop. The fragrance always remains on the hand that gives the rose. Thank you. It was indeed a breathtaking performance by Sangeetapati Pradeep Ratnayaka and his team at this opening ceremony. Thank you so much for sharing your gift with all of us. We take this opportunity to thank the deans of all faculties, all heads of the department, the registrar, bursar and the librarian of the University of Sri Jayewarenepura for their support and cooperation towards the event. We should not forget to thank especially the senior registrar, assistant bursar and all the staff members of the Faculty of Graduate Studies for their assistance towards the conference. Thank you all our guest speakers for accepting our invitation to share your ideas and expertise with us. Sincere appreciation goes to all the session chairs, oral and poster session judges, conveners and co-conveners. Your involvement will result in a successful conference. We are pleased to say thank you to our local and foreign participants and research presenters at the technical session. We sincerely hope that this conference will be all that you expected it to be. During these 2 days of the conference, we hope that you will be able to have valuable discussions, receive many golden suggestions and advice, build new friendship, and initiate strong networking. All the academic, administrative, and non-academic staff members, undergraduate and postgraduate students who have volunteered to help organize this event are highly appreciated and sincerely acknowledged. Ms. Sepalika Bhanusinha, our compeer today at this inauguration ceremony, you did a fantastic job and thank you. We thank the University Media Center for all the audio-visual support received today. We would like to express our gratitude to all the media representatives here at this grand opening ceremony. Thank you for being with us. If we ever have been successful, it is due to the hard work and dedication of our organizing committee. All chairman and chairperson of boards, all faculty representatives, session coordinators and members of all the committees of ICMA 2014. Thank you for all the support received to make this event possible. We thank the editorial board and the strong panel of reviewers of both the Journal of Multidisciplinary Studies and the conference abstract for your commitments towards the conference. All the hard work and dedication of the track chairs are highly appreciated. Your support and commitment have paved the way to a conference brimming with excellence. Special thanks goes to Dr. Prasad Javira for assisting with the conference website and all his countless efforts to make this conference a reality, despite his busy schedule. Dr. Chamali Nahalage is sincerely appreciated for the valuable support received on the preparation of the conference program and the conference proceedings while meeting tight schedule. We would especially like to thank Mr. D.R. Gamini at the Faculty of Graduate Studies for his remarkable dedication to make this event a success. He designed the conference logo, the graphic styles of all the printed matter of the conference. In addition, he has enthusiastically enrolled in many other numerous tasks to make this event run smoothly. We thank the Golden Rose Hotel and their staff members for their courteous support at this inauguration ceremony. There's one person whom I left until last, Professor Swana Piasili, Chair of the Conference, Dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies, and the initiator of ICMA 2014. She is the heart of the organizing team who made this conference a reality. She is the driving force behind the first issue of the Journal of Multidisciplinary Studies, which is launched today. We are proud to say that this is the first journal in multidisciplinary studies in a Sri Lankan university system, and we believe that this will open up a golden platform for the researchers to present their discoveries. Madam, your dedication, motivation, and determination has paved the pathway for an excellent conference that you expected to be. So many people have contributed in so many ways to turn this event into a smoothly running conference. Even though I sincerely wanted to do so, I will not able to read out individual names of all those who helped to organize this conference. If I have missed anyone, please permit me to be excused. Lastly, we thank each one of you for being with us here today. We hope you have an informative and interesting time with us here at ICMA 2014. Thank you and thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we conclude the inaugural session of the ICMA 2014. Right after refreshments, we would be commencing the plenary session on chronic kidney disease with unknown etiology. Mark the end of today's inaugural session. Rise with pride for the national anthem.
Namo